Welcome back, everybody. We're wearing a pink shirt today. America's greatest days. Are they ahead of us? Are they behind us? Does America have a future? I think these are questions we have to ask ourselves, especially in the moment right now where America is more divided than it's ever been. We want to go ahead and say that America was more divided during the Civil War. I actually think we're more divided now than during the Civil War. That's why I think it's only natural that we actually take that step, that next kind of leap from the cold culture war that we've been in to a hot one. I think it kind of makes sense at this point, and so much saber rattling going on in the country right now. And I think it's really highlighted around really the two different stances that people are taking when it comes to this big military parade that's happening in DC. Because on one side, yeah, gross displays of military prowess surrounding a leader's birthday do rub Americans the wrong way generally. But at the same time, it's Flag Day, and we should be super patriotic because we beat the Nazis 100 years ago, and we should roll some tanks down Constitution Avenue because, you know, patriotism is patriotism. You want to show these things off, but timing is also a thing. And in the middle of probably one of the most divisive moments of this president's career, when we're talking about deploying troops and Marines into LA to quell a protest that's happening over there, quell the riots that are happening over there. It just seems like a leap, especially with the parade. And we're talking about, yeah, it's on Flag Day. We beat the Germans a long time ago. But we all know, whether you're right or left, we all know that this is more a celebration of Trump's birthday, right? It's the big birthday parade. And that's really what this is. I mean, of course, people are taking umbrage with that because listen, even if you support the guy, even if you like Trump, hate Trump, whatever, does it seem a bit dictatorish? Does it? Yes, of course it does. And I think it's supposed to. I think a lot of people bury their heads in the sand when it comes to this because if you support the guy, if you voted for the guy, you know, you're going to put yourself in a place where you're just going to deny a lot of the obvious bad stuff. And this happened a lot with Biden when he was in charge too. People just, not the military parades, of course, but people burying their head when it came to the cognitive decline that he was going through, you know, before he was even a president and during his term as president. It's been a fascinating thing to watch, especially because I was outside the country when pretty much all this was going on. You know, from the outside looking in, it's so strange to see two sides live in the same country that look at the world in two completely different realities. But that's where we're at here in America now. We live in the same place. We live right next to each other, you know, neighbors and same families. But we look at the world in completely different ways. And in those separate narratives, the other is the villain, right? It's just, we are a country where we believe that we are living among the enemy all the time. And who's the enemy? Who knows? Like I said, it could be your neighbor, it could be a family member, it could be anybody, right? It creates a sense of paranoia that leaks into everything. So is this the good times? Or is it the good times ahead of us? Because these things just escalate, right? This kind of paranoia, this kind of division, like there's nothing that's going to settle it. When you think that your opposition is evil, when you think that your opposition wants to destroy you, out of necessity, there has to be a clash because two tigers can't live on the same mountain, right? It's not going to happen because these narratives don't parallel each other. You know, they're going in very different ways. And at some point, I think we're getting close to that now where people's outlook on the world is so vastly different that we don't recognize each other as being from the same country. I mean, because we're just so different at that point. I mean, you just look at the immigration thing. You know, made a video about it, a couple of videos about it. And oh Lord, was it divisive. Like, listen, personally, I don't like the idea of military rolling down the street, kicking down doors in America. You know, like I know how these guys are trained. I had the training. You know, I was stationed in 29 Palms. I know 2-7. You know, I was 311. So like, you know, we work with them all the time. We've gotten drunk in fights in the barracks with each other all the time. I mean, I know who these guys are, and I know what riot training that they go through because I went through the same training as well. And I really don't want to see my Marine brothers and sisters out there enforcing one side's perception of law on the American people. Because we all know that like 98% of the people who are in those protests, number one, they're there peacefully, and also they're American citizens. But on the other side, 98% of the people on those protests and those riots, they're probably illegals, and, they should just get kicked out of this country. And if California's government isn't going to do it, then you know what? The federal government should probably just take over and do a better job. Like, it's a slippery slope, but like I said, it's two sides looking at this in completely different angles. One side sees a fascist incursion by the federal government, and the other side sees a state that's been overrun by communists that's working to destroy America. Like, how can these two perspectives, how can these two paradigms exist within the same space? And expected to move forward in a general direction of peace and mutual understanding that we all have the right to, live in the same space. Because like I said, you've drawn a line where this guy's the enemy, or no, that guy's the enemy. More and more as time goes on, we're using more militaristic terms to describe our countrymen. We're quickly turning them from people we disagree with, from the opposition, to combatants. Combatants who are against our way of life. And like I said, it's right and left that are doing this. And justifications on both sides. Listen, I used to be fairly to the right. It's gotten so crazy that I'm not a lefty either. I'm a fairly conservative person between how I was raised, my experience in the military, and kind of my general outlook on kind of protectionist behaviors, and how I've studied history, philosophy, all that, right? It's made me who I am. But at the same time, I'm someone who's traveled the world, lived in different places, talked to a tremendous amount of people, and learned enough that when I voice any kind of opposition to the right, I'm going to be called a communist, a libtard. When I support any kind of protectionist ideals when it comes to immigration, shutting down the border, I get called a fucking right-wing fascist by the other side. It's like there's no win-win situation. There's no win-win in this situation. People are so paranoid that they're looking for a reason to see you as a combatant as well. Listen, we can't all just run inside our homes, hide in a closet, and expect everybody outside in the world to fit our perspectives perfectly. The idea that America is a country very specific in culture that exists on its own, and has roots into history that go past time immemorial, it's just wrong. We're a new country, we're a cosmopolitan country, right? And I understand if you want to argue that, hey, you came in here illegally, you gotta go. Yeah, I get that. That makes sense. But at the same time, we've had a lax system that'll let people into this country for 30, 40, 50 years. And you have multiple generations who were born in this country, who now have roots in this country, see themselves as American, don't even speak the native language that they came from, don't even speak their ancestral language. And now you're like, hey, back to Mexico. Nobody has any idea. You're just going to throw them into kind of like a homelessness or make them a drain on another society, when most of these people are productive members of society, or else you wouldn't be kicking down doors of restaurants or raiding Walmart, for people who are looking for day labor. It's an interesting thing. But on the other side, you have to understand that not all people are the same. Not all cultures are the same. This isn't any kind of fascist talk. It's reality. When people come in from different cultures, they bring their cultural baggage with them. And when so many come in that it just displaces the population of people that were there, you now created a kind of colony. And that's really the perspective of the right. They see California essentially as an immigrant colony and fundamentally un-American. And it doesn't help that you have people waving Mexican flags in the face of their soldiers on the streets. Optics are a thing. Optics are important. And like I said, it's a very complicated issue, but a lot of people aren't complicated. They see a picture and they're going to draw their conclusions, and that's going to be the conclusions that are set in their mind, because people are fucking baboons. And in that primitive brain, we just want to say, this is our land. This is, hey, my family's been here for a long time. Well, forget the natives, right? We don't want to acknowledge anything to do with that. But this is my country. My family's been here forever. Who are you? But at the same time, a lot of those people who are saying, keep these immigrants out, their family immigrated here, maybe not 30, 40 years ago, maybe 60, 70, 80 years ago. They're really splitting hairs here. But I guess there is something to say, well, we're talking about the difference between European migrants and Central and South American migrants and African migrants, Middle Eastern migrants, Indian migrants, and all these places come from different cultures. Yeah, and like I said, I don't think it's a bad thing to ask for some kind of assimilation, but at the same time, nobody can actually narrow down what it means to be an American anymore. The right kind of loosely circles around this idea of a Christian European history at the core of our nation. And I think, yeah, there's something to argue for that. But at the same point, I think a time to argue that was probably 60, 70 years ago, right? Because the position that we're in now in this country, it's so diverse. It's not just white Christian Europe anymore. It's people from absolutely everywhere, And guess what? They don't speak with accents because most of them were just raised in America. So what are you going to say? You got to go? I mean, that's not how it works. And why don't you go? Right? You're Polish. You're British. You're Scandinavian. You're French. You're Italian. Whatever. Who has right? Like I said, the time where it was just like mostly Anglo-Christian Europeans in this country, nobody is alive now that was alive back then. Was it more white back then? Yeah, of course. I mean, like 30, 40 years ago? Yeah. But guess what? We stopped having kids. We stopped having kids, and the people who come in here, they have a lot of kids. It's just a natural way of things. Like I said, the argument to prevent the America that is today should have happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, but it didn't. It didn't, or if it did happen, no one took it seriously, and our country is where it is right now, and you just kind of have to deal with that. But by seeing California as a colony and that you're just going to take it over and purge what you consider to be foreign nationals from American soil, listen, yeah, you're going to draw a lot of opposition from that. Even people who don't have a problem with stopping immigration, full stop, are having a problem with a military takeover of American cities and a probable institution of martial law being made. None of this is that complicated, but we've drawn the line and we've gone to our sides. So I said, the best days in America are behind us if they ever were, but what's coming ahead of us is a very dark thing because, like I said, this kind of setup, this game, the act that we're in needs to come to a conclusion. And only one side walks away with this, unless you're talking about the dissolving the United States, splitting it up between red and blue, right and left. At some point, you're going to have it that half this country is just generally going to be oppressed by the other half. It's just the way that it is, whether it's right or left. I don't know, but it's complicated times. Complicated times for sure. And I don't think that we're each other's enemies, but I guess that's how it works. I guess we make each other's enemies, just by what we believe. And I always wondered how World War II happened, or how Civil War happens. But I think it's interesting because we live in a time now where we're seeing how those tensions get heightened to the point where Civil War is a thing. It's not just a possibility, it's an inevitability. It needs to happen. Not something I want. That's not what I'm saying. God, it sounds terrible. Civil war in a country where the gun ownership is higher than anywhere else in the world, where you have more combat veterans now that are alive than in any other time in history, maybe in any place on the planet. Yeah, it's a bad thing that would happen. It's a bad thing that would happen, and nobody should want it. But like I said, America's best days, but I don't know. But hey, if you're still here at this point, like and subscribe. Think about becoming a member. Crazy times we live in. But, we'll see what happens this weekend. I might wander down to D.C. to see the military parade / protest that's happening. No Kings protest happening over 1,000 cities. And at the same time, Donald Trump came out and said that any protest, not riots, but any protest would be met with fierce force, very hard force. And that's not good because the First Amendment. But anyway, hope you guys have a good one.